The day I found out I was pregnant, Frank abandoned me. He threw a bank card at me and said, "There's 3 million in there, take it and leave." I took it, pursing my lips. That little, I thought to myself, that's not even enough to raise a child to 5 years old. He listened, his hand pausing on his cigarette pack, then said, "I'll transfer another 2 million to the card in a couple of days." I knew when to quit while I was ahead, so I smiled and packed my things to leave. A month later, I was driving my BMW past a luxury shopping mall, and I actually ran into Frank, dressed in a rider's uniform, delivering food. "Boss, what's going on with you? Are you filming a variety show?" I wasn't afraid of embarrassing him, so I went straight up and asked. Frank scanned me up and down, then sighed. "Actually, a month ago, I went bankrupt. I can't afford to keep you anymore. I was afraid you'd despise me. That's why I sent you away." I blinked, utterly bewildered. "Then what about your white moonlight?" Frank said. "She came back to me, didn't despise me, and is willing to live a hard life with me and help me rise again." Upon hearing this, I immediately put on my sunglasses. "I wish you both eternal unity and 100 years of happiness." Having said that, I darted into the car and sped off, leaving Frank, still wearing his rider's helmet, disheveled in the wind. There are 3 things I fear most in life. First, not having money. Second, no life. Third, alive but broke. I was on the road, speeding at 70 miles per hour. Frank, riding his electric scooter, actually caught up. "What are you doing? You're not trying to get your money back, are you?" He followed me the whole way, so I had no choice but to pull over, roll down the window, and confront him. Don't misunderstand. Frank's handsome face, under his helmet, was streaming with sweat, and his expression held a hint of tentativeness. I wanted to ask, "Do you still have enough money?" Only then did I lower my guard. Barely. In the 2 years I followed Frank, he was always generous with me. Before, 5 million was just half a year's expenses for me. "Barely," Frank repeated, frowning as he asked, "Then would you go find other men?" I looked at the car ceiling and rolled my eyes. "Frank, instead of worrying about your ex's love life, you should worry about whether your orders will be overdue." With that, I closed the car window and drove away. This time, Frank didn't follow. Back home, my best friend Lucy messaged me, "OMG, the delivery rider who brought my food today was Frank." "Is that Frank, the one who bought you a whole wall of Hermes? Is he experiencing life?" I replied, "He went bankrupt, broke up with me last month, and is now delivering food to support his white moonlight." Lucy was speechless. How to put it? He's truly a man of deep loyalty and integrity. Lucy's father died young. Her mother is paralyzed, and with a low education. She makes a living by shaking bubble tea. Over the past 2 years, I've helped her out quite a bit. At the end of our conversation, I transferred another 50,000 yuan to her, but she backed out. "No need, Lily, I found a sales job. Starting next month, I'll be earning over 10,000 a month." I smiled, no longer exchanging pleasantries with her. After all, from now on, I also have this one in my belly to support. After that, I never saw Frank again. With the spare money I'd saved over the past 2 years, I bought a large apartment in a high-end residential complex. I hired a professional financial advisor to help manage the remaining money I usually keep to myself, rarely going out or ordering takeout. That day, after my prenatal checkup, I left the hospital. I actually saw Frank's white moonlight, Sarah, get into the back of a Maybach, driven by curiosity. I followed her all the way in my BMW. I personally watched the car drive into a high-end villa complex. Wow, has Frank been cheated on? Driven by an even stronger desire for gossip, I waited in my car until evening. When I finally saw the Maybach drive out again, I followed it. This time, the car stopped in the city center. Sarah got out, and then hailed a taxi on the side of the road to leave. I followed them again. This time, we ended up at a rundown old place. Sarah got out of the car, entered the building, and went upstairs. I was certain this was Frank and Sarah's new home. It's really far from his previous luxury villa. The surroundings were filled with the musty stench of moss mixed with mildew from the old residential area. I sighed. At midnight, a small electric scooter stopped at the unit entrance. "Frank." I leaned against the scooter and called out to him, "Lily." He recognized me and walked over in surprise. "How did you know I live here?" I didn't answer. instead hinting directly. You should really be nicer to Sarah, but he clearly didn't understand, raising the plastic bag in his hand and saying, I'm really good to Sarah. Whenever I find leftover meals while delivering takeout, I always bring them back for her to eat. My gaze shifted to the bowl in his hand, a clump of mushy wontons, then back to him. I couldn't help but give him a look that said, Are you out of your mind? Guess I talk too much. I chuckled and quickly left again. I suspect Frank got possessed after becoming poor. I'd better keep my distance, lest my kid gets influenced by his weirdness, but I never expected that even though I didn't provoke them, Sarah would come knocking at my door instead. She directly knocked on my door and demanded I return the money. Frank is living in poverty, while you seem to be doing quite well. She walked in without even taking off her shoes, sat directly on the sofa, and looked around. Did he give you 5 million before he went bankrupt? Do you know how much debt he's in now? If you have any conscience left, return the money. Without saying another word, I called Frank and started with, Frank, was it you who sent Sarah to ask me for money? The person on the other end of the phone paused for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was deep. Sarah went to see you. I didn't know about this. Where are you staying now? I'll come right over and take her away. When Frank arrived, he was still wearing his delivery rider uniform. He even asked me for shoe covers proactively. I said it wasn't necessary and told him to hurry up and take her away. He said, You're germophobic, I'd better put it on. Seeing this, Sarah let out an angry, cold laugh. You don't need to come in, I'll go out myself. Picking up her bag, Sarah walked past him and accused him bitterly, Frank, when you're at home, so tired you collapse onto bed without even taking off your shoes. When your socks are flung everywhere, did you ever think about me the way you think about Lily? With that, she ran off in tears. I stood leaning against the entryway with my arms crossed, Frank and I exchanging bewildered looks. After a long silence, I finally sighed and said, Anyway, you still need to pay attention to hygiene. Frank withdrew his gaze from outside the corridor and gave me a complicated smile. But Lily, I've been too exhausted lately to care about these details. Hearing this, I sighed. I told you so. I'm afraid of poverty. Even someone like Frank, a dignified and proper eligible bachelor, saw his hygiene habits plummet after losing his money. But why do I always feel that Frank's recent behavior carries a hint of strangeness? Maybe it's just my pregnancy making me prone to wild thoughts. The next day, I transferred 200,000 to Frank's bank account. P.S. Never again. The price of a soft heart is too high. If I keep feeling sorry for others every time, who will feel sorry for me? A single mother. After transferring the money, I finally took a peaceful nap upon seeing the balance in my bank card. But ever since Frank found out my home address, takeout orders I never placed would mysteriously appear at my doorstep. Sometimes, it was supermarket deliveries, vegetables, fruits, fish, meat, eggs, milk. Sometimes, it's sweet desserts and cakes. Sometimes, it's milk tea or coffee. Sometimes, it's various feasts, Japanese cuisine, grilled fish, hot pot, barbecue. None of these are particularly expensive, but they're all things I love to eat. If it weren't for Frank messaging me every time saying he ordered it, I'd think someone was trying to poison me. I know he's probably doing it to thank me for giving him 200,000, so every time, I graciously accept it, while enjoying it. I'd pat my belly and mutter to myself, Sweetie, this is Daddy's treat. What, you don't like how it tastes? Don't be like that. Your dad can only afford these right now. Just bear with it for now. Mommy will take you to a Michelin-starred restaurant tomorrow. But when I actually sat in the Michelin-starred restaurant, savoring the exquisite dishes prepared by the chef for me, I couldn't help but picture Frank sitting across from me, dressed in a tailored suit, presenting a velvet box like a treasure, gifting me a ruby necklace. From the very beginning of our relationship, I knew Frank had an unforgettable white moonlight, his college crush, Sarah. But later, he didn't win over the goddess. Instead, he turned his focus to his career, and with a ruby necklace, he won me over. I thought it was because I was truly afraid of being poor. From a remote mountain foot where even navigation couldn't find me, I came to the big city and almost got sold into a brothel to become a pimp. The job hunting journey was full of setbacks, exposing me to the complexities of human nature. I met both good and bad people, so when Frank opened the velvet box and said to me, Lily, stay by my side, I agreed without hesitation. When I saw Sarah's solo photo, long treasured in his desk drawer, I wasn't that upset. Sarah's features and mine aren't very similar, it's just that we happen to share a type. What have I lost again? I haven't lost much, at least I still have money, bags, and countless beautiful clothes, a handsome and wealthy sugar daddy who's so generous to me. What more could I ask for? So, when I found out Frank's first love was coming back to him, I decisively took the 5 million and left. People shouldn't be too greedy. I had already obtained something I could hardly dream of in my first 24 years. As for that thing called true love, let others have it, sniffling. I stuffed expensive foie gras into my mouth while casually telling the chef shaving black truffles, "Don't stop, just finished eating," when my phone rang. "Hello, your boyfriend, a young man named Frank, was hit by a car while delivering food. Please come to the hospital right away." When I arrived, Frank was lying on the hospital bed, in good condition and fully conscious. Seeing me, his frown relaxed. "Lily, you're here." I looked him up and down, only spotting a bandage around his ankle that wasn't even as wide as my palm. If I'd arrived any later, wouldn't it have healed already? Frank scratched his head. "Sorry, Lily, I passed out at the time, and the medical staff unlocked my phone with facial recognition. They took the liberty of calling you." I put my hands on my hips. Why didn't they call Sarah? Isn't she your current girlfriend? I'm so pissed. I ate too much just now. Drove like crazy all the way. Then ran up here. Now I've got a damn stitch in my side. I'm pregnant, you know. Frank stopped laughing, a trace of bitterness flickering across his features. He explained, "In my contacts, your name is still saved as Baby." I listened, took a deep breath, and said nothing more. As I walked out carrying my bag, I happened to bump into Sarah rushing over. When she saw me, she merely sneered but surprisingly didn't mock me. Even accompanying me to the hospital entrance, I opened the car door. While she stood on the steps, looking down at me and asking, "Lily, let me ask you, is Frank not capable in that department?" My eyes widened. I instinctively touched my lower abdomen. Could it be that after Frank became poor, not only did his hygiene habits deteriorate, but his performance in bed also declined? That can't be right. I couldn't help but recall Frank's 8-pack abs and the well-defined muscles on his arms and chest, and every time his outwardly refined appearance belied his utterly wicked nature, as if he had boundless energy to spare. Doubts arose in my mind, yet I put on an expression that seemed to say, "You finally understand me. If I take the medicine, barely 3 minutes," I said lazily, my tone full of weariness. Sarah looked at me, speechless. Seizing the moment, I moved closer to her. "So I really don't understand. What do you even see in him? You're into him because he's handsome, but he's useless. You think he's got potential, but right now he's so broke he can barely support himself." Sigh. I patted her shoulder. "I guess you just didn't meet him at the right time." Haha. Sarah's expression changed as she smiled and swatted my hand away. "You're really quite vulgar." I pursed my lips, studied her expression, and ultimately couldn't think of anything to say. Turning away, I waved at her. "You're so refined. Wishing you success." I drove a short distance away, then secretly circled back. As dusk fell, Sarah emerged from the hospital, walked down the side street, and got into that Maybach again. This time, I saw the Maybach drive into that same villa complex again with my own eyes. It didn't leave until late at night. I'm now absolutely certain that Frank's head has turned into a lush oasis. Driven by some inexplicable emotion, I returned to the hospital and stepped back into the ward. This guy is sound asleep. I put my bag down, sat on the edge of the bed, and started groping him all over. As I kept touching him, I gradually felt his body temperature rising, and a certain part of him was also dutifully standing at attention. I breathed a sigh of relief, but the questions in my heart grew even stronger. Just as I was about to withdraw my hand and stand up, my wrist was suddenly gripped by a force. A deep, hoarse voice sounded from in front of me. "Lily, look at what you've done." I raised my head and met a pair of eyes equally unfathomable in the dim light. "After reducing me to this state, you think you can just run away?" I froze on the spot, not even having the chance to say anything before Frank yanked me into his arms, holding me tight. He used his only functional leg to forcefully flip us over, pinning me beneath him. I was so scared that I reached out to push him away, covering my stomach with one hand, and shouted, "Frank, you pervert, no sense of male decency. I was referring to the fact that he had a girlfriend yet still behaved like such a beast toward his ex. To my surprise, he propped himself up above me with one hand and let out an incredulous laugh. I don't uphold male virtue. There's no man in this world who upholds male virtue more than I do. Then why don't you step aside? I placed my elbow horizontally against his chest, adopting a defensive stance, yet he showed no intention of moving aside. Instead, he looked me up and down with those eyes that could make even a dog feel adored. To make matters worse, he reached out to touch my face, then slid his hand down and pinched my waist. Trembling with fear, I heard him click his tongue disapprovingly above me. Have I been ordering too much takeout for you lately? I think you've gained quite a bit of weight. My scalp tingled as I covered my slightly rounded belly, nearly 3 months pregnant, blinking nervously. Fat, sounds like you're just jealous I'm doing well. I looked at Frank's face, which had noticeably thinned, making his already sharp features even more pronounced. Steeling myself, I pushed him away with some force and sat up. All right, now that I know your body's fine, I can rest easy. I was worried I might have broken you these past couple years. Frank leaned back on the bed with his hands supporting him, gazing at me with clear, gentle eyes. That tender smile at the corner of his lips sent shivers down my spine. I was about to stand up, but he leaned in again and hugged me from behind. Are you done yet? I protested, ready to elbow him. I really don't want to be caught in the act here. Frank gently blocked my movement, dissipating my force, his arm encircling my waist, his chin resting against the hollow of my shoulder. He asked heavily, Lily, how much money do you have left? How long can it last? Hearing this, I sneered coldly. So you're trying to ask me for money again, Frank? Do you think 5 million is a lot? I said through gritted teeth. I know it's not much, Frank said innocently. That's why I'm asking you how long it can last. Rolling my eyes, I deliberately said, 2 months. Damn it, I almost cried as soon as I said it. I'll have to raise the kid well fed and well cared for until they're 18. All by myself with this money, not to mention buying them a house and car, and investing in their education. I can't let my child become someone like me, useless to society. Moreover, I might very well lose millions midway because I'm too soft-hearted toward the child's father. Then, Frank's hand tightened around my waist. Before the money runs out, don't go looking for someone else, okay? His earnest and pleading tone caught me off guard. Are you out of your mind? I couldn't help but turn around and glare at him. He's really overstepping his bounds. Frank touched my face and said with a bitter smile, don't hold back these days. Eat what you want, buy what you want. Got it? As if I'm the kind of person who would hold back. Maybe his expression made him seem a bit pitiful. I sighed and patted the back of his hand jokingly. Don't worry, I'm quite skilled at being extravagant and indulgent. Frank raised his thick eyebrows slightly upon hearing this, then shook his head with a faint smile. I immediately stood up, grabbed my bag, and fled in panic. Frank ended up staying in the hospital for half a month. I really couldn't understand it. The bandage wrapped around his foot wasn't even as wide as a sanitary pad. Why does it feel like a fracture that just won't heal? Yet this wretched bone of mine remains uneasy, always sneaking glances at him, almost every time I'd see Sarah keeping him company in the ward, leaning against the doorframe. I watched Sarah feed him homemade bone broth. Frank would look up at her with a smile after every bite he took. He also held her hand and said, Sarah, I'm sorry for making you suffer with me. When I make a comeback, I'll definitely repay you. From their conversation, I learned that Sarah had even asked her parents for money as a subsidy for their living expenses. Sarah's family background was also quite ordinary, with her parents being retired office workers. Sarah sighed and squeezed his hand in return. Don't say that. It's not like I'm after your money. The white moonlight truly lives up to its name. Thinking of this, I actually felt somewhat understanding towards Sarah's suspected infidelity. Frank is such a useless loser, drowning in debt and penniless, only capable of making empty promises and not even putting in effort in bed. No wonder Sarah couldn't take it anymore and sought excitement elsewhere. I shook my head and left the hospital. I decided not to meddle anymore. They're a perfect match. One willing to hit, the other willing to take it. Besides, the only person Frank has left now is Sarah. What should I do if I find out I've been cheated on and can't handle the shock? Feeling suicidal. During this period, I happily focused on nurturing my pregnancy. Lucy has been very busy lately, having started a new job, and often shares stories about the bizarre clients she encounters, knowing I stay at home all day. She occasionally invites me out on weekends and suggests I make more friends. I licked my ice cream cone and gazed at the sky without saying a word. Lately, I've been feeling sluggish, and I just can't seem to muster any energy. It's like there's a hollow space inside me. Oh, by the way, my company is hosting an agent conference in a couple of days. It's a fancy 5-star hotel banquet. We can all bring guests. Want to come? Lucy coaxed me gently, adding that all attendees would receive a generous gift bag. There might be gold inside, or high-end skincare products. I finished my ice cream cone, nodded, and said, "Let's go. Isn't life all about seeking joy? I can't just stay at home all day, feeling down and out." That day, I deliberately dressed up, put on makeup, and wore a little black skirt I hadn't worn in ages. My barely noticeable baby bump was hidden under the loose skirt, so no one could tell I was pregnant. In the hotel banquet hall, I was sitting at the round table feeling dizzy from hunger, but who would have thought that Lucy's boss, a tall, handsome man in a suit standing at 185 centimeters, would suddenly walk over to me. Upon seeing this, Lucy immediately stood up and said, "Hello, Mr. Wilson." The man addressed as Mr. Wilson leisurely took Lucy's seat and turned to me, saying, "My name is Wilson. I've noticed you for quite a while now. Would it be an honor to get to know you?" Covering my full stomach, I instinctively sucked in my belly. Wilson rested one hand lazily on the table, a silver watch peeking out from his cuff. Vacheron Constantine, a limited edition global release. I swallowed hard and glanced at Lucy. She stood beside Wilson, and after her initial shock, she winked at me with an encouraging look. I looked at the handsome Wilson and smiled. "Sure, my name is Lily, nice to meet you." Wilson tapped the table lightly with his slender fingers, offering a faint, polite smile. "Miss Lily, are you free this afternoon? I'm hosting a tea party at my private villa in the suburbs. If you're interested, I'd be honored if you could join me." Seeing my hesitation, Wilson looked up at Lucy. "Is Lucy your friend? She can come too." Lucy immediately widened her eyes. "Can I go too?" As soon as she finished speaking, Wilson's assistant walked over carrying 2 handbags and handed them to me and Lucy. I opened the exquisite gift box to find a solid 100-gram gold bar inside, along with a complete set of La Mer skincare products, a small token of appreciation. Wilson said softly beside me, "Miss Lily wouldn't look down on it, would you?" "Of course not." I immediately closed the gift box and stood up holding it. "Mr. Wilson is too kind. If there are more events like this in the future, be sure to invite me often." Wilson's smile widened. Lucy and I followed behind him, stepping out through the hotel's grand entrance. Just as the Maybach glided up, a figure suddenly approached across the hotel plaza, dressed in a food delivery rider's uniform, helmet on, carrying a takeout bag in hand. "Looks like he came to deliver food to the hotel, Lily." Frank frowned and called out to me. He walked up to Wilson and me, his sharp gaze sizing me up. "What's your relationship with him?" Frank was about the same height as Wilson and just as handsome, however, dressed in his rider's uniform. Standing before Wilson in his bespoke suit, his presence seemed slightly diminished. I cleared my throat lightly, avoiding eye contact. Just as I was about to say something, a hand reached around my waist, giving me a slight pull. "Wilson." My back stiffened slightly as I heard Wilson beside me chuckle softly. "Frank, what's this? Do you know this lady?" Now, it was my turn to be surprised. "They know each other too." Frank said nothing, his clear gaze fixed on Wilson. Amidst the subtle atmosphere, certain conjectures, combined with recent strange events, took root and sprouted in my mind. At that moment, Frank reached out and grabbed my wrist. "Lily, don't go with him. What's it to you?" I deliberately shook off his hand. "You're bankrupt. Can't I find another sugar daddy?" As if surprised by my bluntness, even Wilson beside us froze for a second. I struck while the iron was hot. "If you've got this much free time, go back and show some concern for the white moonlight who's endured hardships with you." Hearing this, Frank's dimmed gaze lifted slightly, a ripple seeming to stir in his eyes. He frowned deeply, letting out a slightly irritated tch sound. "Forget it, can't be bothered with you." With that, he walked past us, carrying a takeout bag into the hotel lobby. Only then did I approach Wilson. "Let's go, Mr. Way." Wilson cracked a smile and gallantly opened the car door for me. Before getting in the car, I briefly glanced at the license plate number out of the corner of my eye. Sure enough, this Maybach was the same car that had picked up Sarah and entered the villa. Lucy and I spent the afternoon nervously enjoying ourselves at Wilson's private mountain estate. Throughout, I dared not show any sign of abnormality, but in the end, when Wilson sent a car to take us down the mountain, we still encountered a special situation. The Forestry Bureau needs to temporarily close the mountain. There's no other way. We'll have to inconvenience Miss Lily and your friends to stay at the villa for a few days. I pretended to nod regretfully, letting him think I believed his excuse. All right, sorry to trouble you, Mr. Way, I'm used to luxury, so please give me the highest spec suite. The bed must be no less than 3 meters wide, with genuine silk sheets and duvet covers. Also, I'm not accustomed to simple meals. For 3 meals a day, please have chefs certified by the World Association of Chefs Societies prepare my food. As for ingredients, ordinary ones won't do. They must be freshly airlifted from abroad daily, whether for main courses, fruits, or vegetables. Entertainment is essential too. I enjoy watching football, horse racing, and swimming. I see you have football fields, racecourses, and swimming pools here, with plenty of professionals. Organizing a demonstration match for me every day shouldn't be a problem, right? Lucy stood behind me, utterly dumbfounded. At this moment, she truly believed that I had been thoroughly steeped in a life of luxury and extravagance. The more Wilson listened, the more pronounced the smile at the corners of his mouth became. Of course, he nodded. We wouldn't dream of mistreating Miss Lily. After Wilson left, I quickly sent a message to Frank, then deleted it and turned off the screen. A few days later, my phone was indeed unexpectedly lost. When Wilson found out, he had someone deliver a brand new iPhone 17 to me. The following period passed peacefully and comfortably, with Wilson never showing up. The entire mountain was under tight surveillance by uniformed personnel and vehicles. I remained completely at ease, spending my days either wandering aimlessly or indulging in food and entertainment. In just half a month, I gained 5 pounds. But Lucy seemed unable to stay still any longer. That evening, she deliberately came to find me. Lily, she said timidly, sitting beside me but not daring to meet my eyes, I want to confess something to you. Hearing this, I removed the gold foil face mask I was wearing and sighed. Speak. Lucy pursed her lips. Actually, Mr. Wilson bribed me. That's why I brought you to the distributor conference, so he could lure you up the mountain. I narrowed my eyes as I listened. Lucy lowered her head even further. Do you know why he asked you to do this? I crossed my arms and leaned against the headboard as I asked her. I thought he wanted to keep you as his mistress. After saying this, she lowered her head again. I thought that since Frank went bankrupt, I was worried you'd have a hard time, so I agreed to his request. I was stunned. Look at what a great friend she is. Sigh, frustrated, I said. Now, you finally realize his intentions weren't pure, yeah. She scratched her head. He's kept you locked up here for so long but never once entered your room. That seemed off to me, so I decided to come clean. Perhaps noticing my enigmatic expression, she gathered courage to sit closer and asked curiously, Lily, did you already figure something out? I heaved a sigh from deep within my chest. I'm just making conjectures too. We'll probably know in a few days whether my guess is correct. The facts prove my guess was correct. A week later, just after finishing breakfast, I was about to lie down on my 3-meter-wide bed for a morning nap. From halfway up the mountain slope beneath the terrace outside the window, a considerable commotion arose. Not only were there voices, but faint police sirens could also be heard. My heart had just clenched when the suite door was suddenly slammed open with force. I was so scared that I hid in a corner of the balcony. Why isn't anyone here? Mr. Wilson said she usually takes a nap at this time and wouldn't go out. Search more carefully. If we don't have her under our control, the Campbells won't go easy on us. The Campbells, who would have thought? Frank, a self-made man, actually has family backing. Sure enough, I've become a hostage, however. On the day I had this suspicion, Frank understood my hint in front of Wilson. He showed only a slight concern for me, then immediately walked away. This allowed Wilson to relax his guard a little, trapping me on the mountain, intending to probe for a while longer. This probably also bought Frank time to develop discreetly, although I still don't know what he's been quietly developing. All I'm sure of now is that after he broke up with me, he was indeed testing the waters with Sarah. Whether he was pretending to be stingy, or unhygienic, or bad in bed, Sarah surprisingly stuck by him through it all. Adding to that, Sarah had repeatedly gotten into Wilson's Maybach. She was likely Wilson's spy, placed near Frank to try and get something from him. All the suspicions, at this moment, formed a closed loop. I took deep breaths. The people inside were still rummaging through everything, looking for me. I looked down. The terrace was about 1.5 stories above the ground. Below it, there was a hedge. Be a little flexible, move slowly along the low eaves. That should be fine, right? I clutched my slightly bulging belly, having made some kind of decision. Only the strong are worthy of being my children. I stood up, just about to climb down, when from inside, the sound of fists meeting flesh reached me. Immediately after, the patio door was pulled open. My heart pounded. I dared not look back, and with one leg, I swung myself over the railing. A pair of strong arms embraced me from behind, pulling me back from the railing, accompanied by a shout. "Lily," I gasped, as if granted a reprieve, and my eyes welled up. Frank turned me around, gripped my shoulders, and scrutinized me from head to toe with a tense expression. "You're incredibly brave. You actually dared to jump off a building." He finally wasn't wearing his rider uniform. Instead, he wore a black shirt, his hair simply styled and swept to one side, revealing his handsome eyes and brows. At this moment, those eyes and brows were gazing deeply at me. "Woo woo woo," I cried loudly, hugging his neck and burying my face in his embrace. "Frank, I don't want them to catch me, silly Lily." He stroked my hair, laughed at me, and picked me up by the waist, carrying me indoors. As we reached the doorway, he gave me a little bounce. "You greedy cat, what have you been eating lately? You've gained weight again, haven't you?" I pouted and snuggled into his arms. "Just simple stuff, nothing as good as the takeout you order for me." Frank raised an eyebrow. "Simple stuff? You've almost eaten them out of business." Knowing he was exaggerating, I didn't argue with him. I snuggled into his neck and whispered, "Frank, I'm pregnant." The man stopped, froze for a few seconds, then looked at me with surprise and joy, and asked excitedly, "Lily, when did you find out?" My finger traced circles on his exposed collarbone. "The reason I left so decisively back then was because I needed to use your money to raise our child. I don't want our baby to end up as societal scraps like me. I want to raise them to be a societal elite, and that's going to cost a lot of money. You won't blame me, right?" I smiled, my eyes curving into crescents. Frank touched my forehead with his tone serious. "Lily, do you have any idea how dangerous that was? You should have told me then. How could I tell you? You were the one who insisted on sending me away." I rolled my eyes at him and leaned my head on his shoulder. Frank tightened his arms, took a deep breath, and pulled me closer to him again. "I'm sorry, Lily, there's a reason for this, and I'll explain it to you." "No need to explain, I understand. Clever as I am, of course, I've already figured out the whole story." Frank chuckled, carrying me downstairs, asking as he walked, "Then tell me, why did I do it?" I looked up at his sharp jawline. "Wilson, is he your business rival?" Frank raised an eyebrow, a hint of surprise in his expression. "Good, keep going. Did you go bankrupt because of his malicious competition?" I said, pushing his face away. "Don't look at me with that adoring gaze. You have an alias. You're the young master of the Campbell family, and Wilson arranged for Sarah to approach you with ulterior motives, didn't he?" Frank's eyes curved, and the corners of his mouth kept rising. He looked at me approvingly. "You truly are my Lily." I proudly lifted my chin. "After 2 years with you, I've learned a lot through observation." Frank, in a cheerful mood, carried me out of the Mountain Resort Hotel's main entrance and over to the fountain. A group of uniformly dressed people had already formed a circle around the car. "Young master," one of them, with a calm demeanor, stepped forward. "Wilson has fled, and Sarah has been detained by the police." "Understood." Frank nodded. "For the rest, cooperate with the police. All the evidence I have is with my lawyer." In front of the car, a bodyguard opened the car door. Frank set me down and sat in as well. He leaned in, hooked the back of my neck, and pressed his forehead against mine. "Lily, you are not society's scraps." As he spoke, he took my hand. "You are intelligent, but you lack the capital to rely on, which makes merely surviving exhaust all your strength." From now on, I won't let you suffer anymore. A kiss, warm and moist, flowed between their fingers. I will be your support, always. Within a month, Wilson was formally arrested on suspicion of unfair competition and trade secret infringement. Sarah, as an accomplice who was instructed, was given a suspended sentence due to her good cooperation and active provision of evidence. Seeing the news, I counted the days. It really hadn't been more than 2 months since I last went to the hospital and laid my hands on Frank, wife. You don't know how scared I was then. That night, Frank held me, his voice muffled. I was really afraid that after 2 months, when the money ran out, you'd be taken away by someone else. I was half asleep and mumbled in response, I'm not that kind of person. He held me tighter, breathing against my neck. Seeing you with Wilson. My heart almost stopped. If you hadn't deliberately said those harsh words to remind me, I might have lost my composure right then and there. Even if it meant revealing my true identity in public, I would have snatched you away. I burst out laughing, instantly wide awake. The heir to the Campbell Group, who is strategic and refined by day, is a clingy, affectionate person by night. When my belly was 5 months old, Frank and I had a grand wedding of the century, the moment my veil was lifted. He picked me up and kissed me devoutly. Everyone says I must have saved the galaxy in my previous life, but Frank says he was the one who saved the galaxy. I think love is never a luxury. It's easier to obtain than money, yet more precious than money. Those who are willing to give will also receive the most precious gifts bestowed by the universe. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. I am an internet troll. Because I cursed too much. After death, I was punished by the gods and transmigrated into the mute female lead of a tragic romance novel, the kind who gets slandered, slapped, has a kidney removed, suffers a miscarriage, gets her blood drawn, faces cyberbullying, falls into depression, and ultimately dies of cancer. After learning about this bullshit plot, my mouth started itching to speak up again. The moment I opened my eyes after transmigrating, I saw my fiancé, the male lead Frank, holding the female supporting character Lisa and bossing me around. Look at the proposal you made, it's absolute garbage, and made Lisa lose face. Lisa covered her face and fake sobbed. Brother Frank, don't scold Sister Jenny anymore. Sister Jenny surely didn't mean to do it on purpose. I looked around in confusion and realized I was in the office area of a company building, with employees around secretly watching and laughing at me. Binding my system to prompt the plot in my ear, Lisa stole Jenny's proposal and passed it off as her own, but she couldn't even understand it. During the meeting, she misspoke and gave herself away, getting scolded by the chairman. The male lead, in order to defend the little green tea, is now attacking his fiancée. Finally, the system says, host, as long as you obediently follow the plot and endure the suffering, you'll be freed once the novel concludes. I nod to the system to show that it's no problem. This segment, the little green tea's failed scheme and Frank's love-driven betrayal of his fiancée, is a classic trope in angst romance novels. I'm familiar with it, watching the male lead and the female supporting character still bickering endlessly. I opened my mouth and started roasting. You must be quite the chef, sis. Your skills at adding fuel to the fire are top-notch. And you're a master at shifting blame, with that level of expertise. You should be the head chef at a fancy restaurant. Isn't it a bit of a waste to be a spare tire for a broken-down car? The system was shocked, everyone else was stunned, but Lisa instinctively retorted, what are you talking about? I said, can't hear me clearly. Should I carve it on your tombstone for you? You don't even have enough brain capacity to match the amount of earwax in your ears, yet you dare to fight for tasks. You take on tasks but can't even handle them yourself. Are you practicing performance art or something? Have you even learned how to open a PPT? Have you figured out how to type on a keyboard? I could give a pig a computer and it'd manage to type out a couple of words, but you can't even do that, can you? I suggest you go back and redo your 9 years of compulsory education. Lisa's tears fell in torrents. This time, she was genuinely crying. Frank trembled with rage, stomping his feet and shouting, shut up, no matter what, Lisa is still your sister. How could you be so vicious to her? Oh, I haven't even started on you yet. I turned my fire toward Frank. You're like a toad wearing frog skin, plain on the outside but wild on the inside. You even used the proposal I made to hit on girls, so good at presenting others' efforts as your own. Do you want me to lend you a mother while I'm at it? You're such a hypocrite all the time, must be exhausting for your mom, huh? The room fell into dead silence, and everyone looked at me as if I were an alien. The original female lead, Jenny, is a weakling who only lowers her head and feels wronged when criticized. How could she be as tough as me? But whatever, I'm out of here anyway. I grabbed my bag and turned to leave. The original female lead couldn't bear to part with this lousy man and this lousy job, but I sure can. I finally got a chance to live a second life, and there are so many things I want to do. I don't have time to waste on them. Frank was shouting frantically behind me, Jenny, get back here and apologize, otherwise, the engagement is off. I stopped in my tracks and turned to look at Frank, who wore a confident expression. Get on your knees and apologize to Lisa, and promise you'll never do it again, then kowtow 3 times, and we'll let this go. Frank used calling off the engagement to control the original female lead throughout the story, but would I be afraid of that? I asked sincerely, don't you have a mirror at home, or are you just lacking self-awareness? Everyone was shocked. Frank was shocked. I shook my head regretfully. If I were a scrap collector, I'd definitely find you precious. What a pity, but you and that trash picker next to you would make a perfect pair. She's got strong teeth and isn't picky. You two are a match made in heaven. Don't ever separate. Without her, you'd never find someone so shameless. After saying this, I tossed my hair and walked out of the company building feeling refreshed. The system muttered in disbelief. That can't be right. The comments under this novel all say the female lead is timid and doesn't speak up, so how can she talk? I smirked arrogantly. You only read the comments and not the content, didn't you? Serves you right for being careless. After leaving the company, I rushed to the hospital for a checkup. The report showed that both my kidneys are intact, my uterus is stable, and I only have a slight case of breast nodules. Overall, it's not a big issue. I heard that the original female lead died of breast cancer. To avoid getting so angry that I develop cancer, I've decided to spend this life actively confronting people and creating a pleasant and comfortable state of mind for myself. The system stubbornly tried to persuade me. Host, you need to follow my arrangements and work hard to complete the tasks to leave this world. That way, you can live freely in your next life. I said, are you telling me what to do? Why should I wait for the next life to live freely? Can't I just live freely in this life? The system seemed convinced by what I said and murmured after a long silence. You do have a point. At that moment, the phone rang. It was my cheap father, David Lincoln, calling. The system immediately briefed me on David Lincoln's character profile. 20 years ago, David Lincoln abandoned his wife and daughter and ran away from home in order to cozy up to the wealthy woman, White Lotus. With White Lotus's support, he started a business and enjoyed a few good years. However, recently, the Lincoln family has been facing financial difficulties. And the company is also in trouble. David Lincoln is now considering sending Lisa to the Mitchell family for a marriage alliance. Coincidentally, Lisa likes Frank, and Frank can also help the Lincoln family. It's a win-win situation. The plan was well designed, but an unexpected obstacle suddenly appeared. The old lady of the Mitchell family is a shrewd person who could tell at a glance that Lisa wasn't human and absolutely refused to accept her as a daughter-in-law. David Lincoln had no choice. And that's when he remembered he still had a daughter. Coincidentally, Jenny's biological mother had passed away, leaving her all alone and helpless. David Lincoln played the family card and, with just a few words, sweet-talked Jenny into coming back to be the scapegoat. I understood the situation, and as soon as I picked up the phone, I heard the other end start yelling, Jenny, are you crazy? How dare you curse at Frank? Don't you know our Lincoln family is counting on the marriage alliance with the Mitchells to make a comeback? What will happen to the Lincoln family if you drive them away? David Lincoln had already figured out that the original female lead was a pushover, so now he didn't even bother pretending. At the slightest disagreement, he would start hitting and cursing, but I didn't indulge him and fired back right away. Oh, then just go bankrupt. David Lincoln was stunned. What did you say? I said, what, if you don't go bankrupt, are you going to leave the company to me? Back then, you were too stingy to pay $500 in child support, and now you expect me to work my butt off for you. Since you're so tight-fisted anyway, going bankrupt would be perfect. You can go beg for a living, right up your alley. then White Lotus can lie on a tricycle while you pull it from the front, and Lisa can hold the speaker in the back, playing The Wanderer Roams the World, without a home to call his own. How does that sound? David Lincoln roared. I'm your father. How dare you talk to me like that? I said. Oh, I wouldn't dare claim such a family connection. There's a species barrier between us. If I hadn't learned animal language, you still wouldn't be able to communicate with me. All right, I've got things to do. I'm afraid if I say any more, you'll get so worked up you'll jump over the wall. After I finished roasting him, I hung up and blocked his number. The relief was so great it felt like 2 knots in my chest had loosened. The system was stunned. So you really are this good at roasting people? I wasn't done yet, so I kept going with the same energy. You systems have nothing better to do. Do you live by the sea to meddle in everything, even how I shit and fart? You're like a little turtle falling into a salt jar. Way too idle for your own good. If a manure cart passes by your door, would you even take a spoon to taste how salty it is? If you love playing the hero so much, why not go to the underworld and help King Yama mark the book of life and death? The first name you should cross out is your own, because no one is more annoying than you, and the author who wrote this book has the IQ of 2 pigs, because 1 pig isn't enough to describe his stupidity. Even Tofu has a brain, but he doesn't. If a zombie opened his skull, it would sigh in disappointment. When I have money someday, I'll send you all to the best hospital to treat your above-the-neck disability. The male lead is even worse. While others establish themselves by 30, he's 30 and still acting like a hypocrite. He keeps a harem on the side while whining about how the female lead hurt his feelings. How the hell did I hurt him? Only after the female lead died did he regret it, like a child crying for milk after it's dead, wiping snot after it's reached his mouth, or swerving after the car has already hit the wall. The system flees in panic. Wah, stop scolding us. We were wrong. After leaving the hospital, I went straight back to the original owner's rented apartment to rest. Yes, I, the female lead of a romance novel and the fiancé of a super domineering CEO, still have to live in a rented apartment. What a moral decay. Where is the humanity? Where is the social bottom line? And where is the key? I searched through my bag but couldn't find it. So I started asking the system. The system timidly reminded, this part of the plot is, after being humiliated by Frank during the day, you stayed up late working on a proposal for Lisa. When you got home late at night, you realized you'd lost your keys. You went to Frank for help, but he thought you were deliberately trying to seduce him and kicked you out, leaving you freezing outside. I said, stop. The system was shocked. I glanced at the wall and casually made a call. Hello. Is this the locksmith? The system was shocked. I slammed the phone and banged on the wall. If only the female lead's IQ were as big as her shoe size, she'd know that calling a locksmith is more reliable than relying on a man. There are so many ads plastered all over the wall, practically right in front of her eyes, and she still can't see them. I don't think she should donate a kidney. She should donate her eyeballs instead. That David Lincoln hasn't cared about her for 20 years. And just by playing the victim, she dares to come back and take someone else's place in marriage. I think her brain is either full of shit or piss. When I send you all to the mental hospital, I might as well take Jenny along too, but I suspect she'll be harder to treat than any of you. Others harm others without benefiting themselves, but she harms herself to benefit others, with such a spirit of self-sacrifice. Even the giant Buddha would weep and make room for her. The system sighed. Hearing you even curse the female lead makes me feel a bit better. After successfully entering the room, I felt a bit more satisfied. Jenny does have her strengths, like being hardworking and good at housekeeping. Although the small rental apartment is a bit shabby, she has made it very cozy. I was tired after running around all day and collapsed onto the bed, ready to sleep. The system relentlessly buzzed in my ear. Let me tell you more about the plot. Actually, Jenny and the male lead met when they were kids, and the male lead likes Lisa because he mistook her for someone else. Hey, don't fall asleep, I'm serious. The later part where the male lead chases his wife through hell is quite satisfying. You should reconsider. Listening to the system's noisy chatter, I drifted into a deep sleep at some point and didn't wake up until the next morning. When I looked at my phone again, I found several abusive messages, mostly sent by David Lincoln from a different number. Lisa sent a few passive-aggressive apologies with fake crying, while Frank kept his cool and stayed silent. There was no word from HR either. Only a few colleagues I get along with asked about yesterday's situation under the guise of checking on work. I wasn't interested in anything else. So I just screenshotted Lisa's messages and posted them on my public moments with the caption, "Cry me a river, bitch." After that, I freshened up, put on heavy makeup, and planned to go out and have some fun, but then I saw 58 comments under my moments post, with Frank standing out the most. "Get over here to work right now." Oh, I thought he was going to fight with me over Lisa, but it turns out he just wants me to work. But this was expected. I heard from the system last night. The original female lead was diligent and hardworking, and half of the company's business was tied to her. If she really left, it would definitely leave a lot of messes behind. Since they're not kicking me out, I'll just go to work as usual. It seems the female lead has a collaborative project that's almost finished, with a bonus of 50,000 yuan. If I'm going to leave, I'll take the money first and then go. Half an hour later, I arrived at the company right on time. As soon as I stepped inside, the noisy workspace instantly fell silent. Everyone had witnessed my heroic deeds from the day before and was sneaking glances at me. I was about to take my seat when Chandler, the department director who had always looked down on the female lead, came over and stopped me. The system immediately provided me with this person's information. Chandler is Frank's subordinate and Lisa's admirer. Because of these two roles, he often made things difficult for the female lead. I slowly finished reading the materials, and at that moment, Chandler was slamming the table angrily, shouting, "Jenny, how dare you show up for work right on time?" I was speechless. "Then why don't you tear off a layer of your face and lay it at the entrance as a doormat, so I can step on you every day on my way to work? After all, you have so many layers of face. Tearing one off shouldn't be a big deal, right?" One of the employees couldn't hold back and burst out laughing. Chandler was furious. "Stop talking nonsense. I meant you should come earlier. Everyone else in the department arrives early and leaves late, but you," I said. "Then I think you should reflect on whether your leadership is inadequate and your work arrangements are unreasonable if everyone can't clock in and out on time. Look at you, delaying me for an hour isn't a big deal, but there are 20 people in the department, which adds up to 20 hours. All those 20 hours were wasted because of your foolishness. Don't you feel ashamed?" Chandler was dumbfounded, and a colleague hiding behind him secretly gave me a thumbs up. I walked up and patted Chandler's shoulder to comfort him, saying, "Don't be too hard on yourself. If there's a problem, just fix it. Nobody's perfect. After all, you evolved later than the rest of humanity, and we can still embrace biodiversity." Chandler angrily brushed my hand away and snapped, "How dare you insult me?" I frowned. "Is this even considered scolding? I haven't even started yet." "Okay." Just as Frank was walking over, Chandler hysterically tattled like a kindergarten child, "Frank, Jenny is way out of line, and she doesn't even respect the Leah." Frank gave him a cold glance. "Professionally, she's not your direct subordinate. Personally, she's my fiancée, the future lady of this company. Does she need to respect you?" Chandler and the onlookers were all stunned. It's no wonder they were surprised. When had the ever-arrogant and domineering Frank ever defended me like this? It was as if the sun had risen from the west. I suspect they all thought Frank might be a masochist, favoring whoever criticized him. I was secretly enjoying the moment when Frank suddenly glanced at me coolly and said, "You, come with me." I immediately smelled a conspiracy. Under the suspicious gazes of everyone, I followed Frank into the office, as expected. The old dog started causing trouble as soon as he closed the door. With bloodshot eyes, he looked at me and said, "Something happened to Lisa." I was so happy that I blurted out, "How could this happen? I hope she's in trouble." Frank completely ignored my sarcasm. He just stared at me intently, his eyes flashing with a complex light. "It's all because of you. Yesterday, you scolded her, and she got so worked up that she fainted and was diagnosed with uremia. You have to take responsibility. As long as you give Lisa a kidney, I'll protect the Lincoln family, and I'll marry you too." I was utterly amazed by his brilliant, Frank-like train of thought and gave him a round of applause. If we're talking about top-tier capitalists, Frank takes the cake. "So, I'm supposed to sacrifice myself and donate a kidney, get nothing out of it in the end, and still thank you for your generosity, huh?" Frank said with great confusion. "Where did you not benefit? You married me." I pulled a few A4 papers from beside his desk. "If we're talking about benefits, let's get down to something concrete. Write an agreement. pledging to give me 50 million in your personal name without any regrets or attempts to reclaim it. After all, I did donate a kidney, in case there are any future complications or side effects that need treatment. 50 million is a friendship price. Frank was furious. Are you obsessed with money? You kept saying you cared about me. But now you just want my money, I said with deep disappointment. Look at you, yesterday you kept saying you loved Lisa, but today, when Lisa is sick, you've changed your heart. You won't even part with a mere 50 million. Aren't you just toying with Lisa's feelings? Frank tried to steer the conversation back. Don't change the subject. I was just saying, your feelings for me can't even compare to money. I slammed the table. What feelings are you talking about? It's just a lousy arranged marriage. What more do you want? The air fell silent. Frank stared at me in disbelief for several seconds before finally murmuring, You're not Jenny. At that moment, I really thought I was about to be exposed. Could it be that this fool, who seems like an idiot, is actually a genius? It's not impossible, after all. He is the male lead. But the next second, Frank narrowed his eyes slightly, and his chiseled face revealed a mix of 3 parts indifference, 4 parts sarcasm, and 5 parts mockery. The you right now is just a facade you've put on. Deep down, you're still obsessed with me and unwilling to let go, I said, shocked. Frank, did you think that by acting indifferent, you could attract my attention and favor? How naive. Yes, I was indeed too naive. For the first time, I, who have always been unbeatable in verbal battles, felt mentally exhausted. After all, insulting someone who can't understand a word doesn't bring any sense of accomplishment. My first negotiation with Frank ended on a sour note. At that moment, I was truly speechless. After thinking for a while, I suddenly raised my hand and slapped him across the face, then took advantage of his shock to turn around and run away. The system was so angry it yelled, I told you to follow the plot earlier, but you didn't. Out of the entire story, the female lead only slapped someone once, and you just had to be the one to do it. I wasn't convinced either. What did you say yesterday? Wasn't Lisa faking an illness part of the mid-story plot? How did I run into it as soon as I got here? The system said. How dare you say that? It must be because you recklessly altered the plot, causing the supporting female character to adjust her strategy. I'm warning you. If this continues, your mission is going to fail. I fell silent for a moment and reflected on myself. It seems I need to adjust myself as well. I can't just casually curse at people like this anymore. The system was very happy at the time, thinking I was willing to turn over a new leaf and start afresh. But the adjustment I mentioned was just about putting my plan to run away on the agenda. If uremia has already arrived, can kidney harvesting be far behind? Frank is a potential criminal. I need to get out of here as soon as possible to stay safe. After that day, I started working hard like the original female lead, hoping to finish the project as soon as possible, get my commission, and leave. During this time, Frank and Lisa's family took turns, harassing me 800 times a day, using all kinds of tricks, but no threats, bribes, or sob stories worked on me. I stayed firm and responded to every situation the same way. Whoever bothered me, I'd let them have it. The benefit of doing this is that no one in the company dares to mess with me anymore. Those who admired Frank, flattered Lisa, or took pleasure in suppressing the original female lead no longer dare to cause me trouble. Life has become incredibly smooth sailing. The dog system initially tried to persuade me earnestly to follow the plot. After realizing I was completely unyielding, it started slacking off, doing nothing all day and taking pleasure in listening to me scold people. A week later, the project at hand finally reached its conclusion, and I submitted my resignation letter to the company. Frank, worn out from worrying about Lisa's condition, looked at me for a long moment before finally signing the resignation form with resignation. Hand over your tasks to manager Lou. At the latest, you can leave in a month. It seems Frank has learned his lesson, knowing that going against me will only get him criticized, so he won't say any more nonsense. I was satisfied and was about to leave with the report when he suddenly called me back. Jenny, you've signed this project to FY Group. There's a dinner tonight to discuss some collaboration details. You should go. Consider it a good way to wrap things up before you leave. I agreed. Although I may not hold back with my words, I still have professional integrity. I'll do the work that's expected of me. But 6 hours later, standing in an empty villa in a formal dress and heavy makeup, I just wanted to call myself an idiot. Frank, that legal illiterate, that potential criminal, he tricked me into coming here and locked me up. I mean, folks, the original work didn't even have this imprisonment trope. How come there's an extra project added later? Just then, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around and, sure enough, it was Frank making his grand entrance. I cooperatively voiced a soul-searching question. What exactly are you trying to do? What am I trying to do? I just want you to behave and stop making a scene, Frank said in a deep, breathy voice that sounded as if he were physically drained. Slowly moving closer to me, he tugged at his tie with one hand, one eyebrow slightly raised, the corner of his mouth curling in the opposite direction, revealing a sly, captivating smile. Playing the game of playing hard to get too often can backfire. Isn't it just the position of the Foo Group's young mistress? I can give it to you, but for now, you'll have to pay a small price. He emphasized the word, price, and threw away his tie, then began unbuttoning his shirt. I backed away step by step in horror, tightly covering my mouth to keep from vomiting. It's so greasy, too greasy, I'm physically nauseous. Dude, you can't just resort to underhanded tactics just because you can't out-insult me. The dog system eagerly cheered on. Host, insult him. Roast this damn pervert to death. I'm speechless, the system said. Host, unleash your ultimate move. Where's your chain of killer techniques? Quick, send his ancestors 8 generations back to their graves with style. Poke his weak spot. I trembled with fear. No, I don't dare. After all, he's legally ignorant. What if he thinks killing isn't a crime? The system said. Seriously, I thought you weren't afraid of anyone. I said, is it possible that even though I'm a troll, I'm not a desperado? The system was silent for a long time. Then it spat out 3 words. Dream shattered. I said, what do you mean? Your dream is shattered. My dream is shattered. I heard that other people's systems come with cheat codes, like points, item shops, and newbie gift packs. Give me one of those, the system said. Please adjust your attitude, host. You're here to be punished in a tragic story. What do you need items for? I'm really feeling awful. What's the difference between my useless system that has no functions at all and an AI that can only chat? By the time Frank walked up to me, he had already taken off all his clothes. Piece by piece, he slightly spread his arms, flexing his chest, abs, and biceps, and said, woman, are you satisfied with what you see? I was speechless. The system sighed, its tone tinged with pity. Anyway, the scene is all set up now. Why don't you go with the plot of forced possession and an unwanted abortion? Let's add a bit of suffering. It'll make it easier for me to report to the higher-ups. Before I could respond, Frank stretched out his hand toward me with a cold, arrogant smirk. Just then, the door was violently kicked open with a loud bang. Startled, I took the opportunity to drop to the floor, wailing and throwing a tantrum. Help, assault, I'm going to die. Frank was dumbfounded. And then he was promptly pinned to the ground and subdued by the police who rushed in. But the domineering boss is indeed a domineering boss. Frank still remembered his authority, struggling and cursing angrily. Shift plus tab plus space. This is private property. Who gave you permission to barge in? A young police officer said authoritatively. We received a report from a concerned citizen that you were attempting to commit a crime. Please come with us. As they spoke, they forcibly escorted the completely naked Frank out. The system watched the cursing figure fade into the distance, completely stunned. When did you call the police? I sighed. You see, you're still too naive. How could I not have any precautions against someone trying to harm me? Did you think I only know how to argue? I even brought a tracking device. Okay, I called the police as soon as the villa was locked. Thank goodness the police still exist in this world. I was about to get up when suddenly a uniform was draped over me. Looking up, I saw a handsome young man with bright eyes and a gentle smile, asking, Miss, are you okay? I'm fine. I just got a little carried away. After being helped up, I couldn't resist leaning against the guy's chest and secretly giving it a little touch. So good, this is what real muscle feels like without any enhancements. An hour later, Frank and I were squatting in the police station giving our statements. Wrapped in a military coat, Frank crossed his long, hairy legs and said to the officer taking notes with an elegant posture, She's my fiancée. What we do in our own home is none of your business. No, he's my brother-in-law. He's been harassing me behind my sister's back. I immediately offered up Lisa's social media feed. Thank you, miss, for providing so much evidence just to provoke me, which confirms my identity as the sister-in-law. Then the expressions of all the police officers changed when they looked at Frank, probably because they rarely see such a bold move. I wiped my tears weakly. Although I work at my brother-in-law's company, I've been avoiding him to prevent any suspicion. This time, he tricked me into coming by saying it was a client dinner. If you had arrived any later, I would have. Frank looked impatient. Jenny, that's enough. I already said I plan to marry you. You should know when to stop. The guy with the well-built chest whom I harassed was furious. He slammed the table and said, "Do you have any sense of the law? You can't just marry someone on a whim. What you should do now is show a good attitude and offer compensation to seek reconciliation, not continue to throw a tantrum." Fu, the domineering CEO, instantly flew into a rage. No one in this world can boss the male lead around, not even the police. The government is incompetent. The law is also ineffective. Fu, the domineering CEO, slammed the table and stood up, delivering that classic line, "Watch your tone. Do you believe I can make it impossible for you to survive in H City?" I was inwardly shouting, "Incredible, the domineering CEO is finally taking a hard stance against the judicial system." The muscular guy turned his head to look at me expressionlessly. I responded with a glance, and he immediately understood. Lowering his head to sign a detention order, Frank looked utterly incredulous, cursing and grumbling as he was dragged away again. I think I might be the first female lead in a tragic romance novel who managed to send the domineering CEO to jail. If I'd put in a bit more effort, I might even get Frank to spend a few years working a sewing machine. Just thinking about it gets me a little excited. Later, the guy with the well-built chest muscles took me home. I delicately expressed my fear of the criminals to him and successfully got his private contact information. The next day, I went to work as if nothing had happened. Whether Frank showed up or not didn't matter. I just didn't want to get my pay docked for skipping work. Even though I didn't say much, news of Frank's detention still spread quickly. All sorts of rumors and gossip were circulating around the company. Soon, Lisa, who had been pretending to be sick, couldn't sit still any longer. After work, she cornered me at my doorstep and ordered me arrogantly, "Go to the police station and withdraw the case. Get Frank's brother released." Look, another person ignorant of the law. I kindly explained to her, public prosecution cases aren't something I can just withdraw on a whim. I suggest both of you take some time to learn more about the law. Knowing and abiding by the law is what makes a good citizen. Oh, and by the way, I heard there are relevant courses in prison. You could go there for some further education and even pick up a proper skill. Listen, once you learn it, it's all yours to keep. Lisa was so anxious she stomped her feet. What do we do now? If Frank's brother isn't released, the Lincoln family's investment is completely off the table. I shrugged. There's nothing I can do this time. Tell him to be more careful next time. A venomous gleam flashed in Lisa's eyes. Jenny, you did that on purpose. Just you wait. You'll regret this. She turned and walked away, moving with such energy that she hardly seemed like someone suffering from uremia. I didn't take Lisa's threat seriously. After all, in the original story, she wasn't exactly a mastermind. It was just that the female lead wasn't very bright either, which was why Lisa could bully her. So, that very evening, I witnessed Lisa's ability to take action. While I was scrolling through my phone, I received a notification. When I clicked on it, I saw that it was a lengthy post written by Lisa. Lisa tearfully complained that her own sister had set her sights on her fiancé. Although the fiancé had firmly rejected the sister, she still wouldn't give up. She lured the fiancé into a room with ill intentions. The fiancé fought back desperately, but the sister, driven by the belief that if she couldn't have him, she would ruin him, called the police and falsely accused the fiancé of being the rapist. Now, her poor fiancé is being detained. At the very end, she tagged me, saying she hoped I would show mercy and let them go. There were many related images, including sweet photos of her and Frank, as well as screenshots of company employees' comments describing the original female lead as a simp. This social media post went viral as soon as it was posted, and there are already thousands of comments below, all of which, without exception, are criticizing me. They even dug up my real information and prominently placed Jenny's name on the trending topics. As a result, many insiders came forward, revealing the inside story of the Mitchell and Lincoln family's marriage alliance, portraying me as the troublemaker who ruined both families. The outraged netizens furiously attacked my private messages and comment section, with the foul language being too offensive to read. I was trembling all over, couldn't even hold my phone steady, and tears were streaming down my face. The system, seeing me like this for the first time, hurriedly tried to comfort me. "Host, don't be afraid. It's just online bullying, we'll find a way to deal with it." I wiped away my bitter tears and said, "No, I'm just too excited, this plotline has finally arrived." The system was shocked. "Who am I?" "I am an internet troll." "The internet, troll, the internet is my camouflage. I can curse at will without worrying about getting beaten up." I pulled out the original owner's long dusty wireless keyboard, like a veteran returning to the battlefield to pick up his sword and start wreaking havoc. "I'll clarify things when I have the time." Netizen 1, "This kind of person is so disgusting, going after her own sister's husband, and the worst part is he doesn't even want her. A simp, laughing to death." I said, "Seems like your stomach is so messed up that you lost your brain in the toilet. Otherwise you wouldn't be spouting such brainless nonsense. This kind of trash is exactly your type. Why don't you take him, slice him up, and split the pieces?" Netizen 2, "Shameless homewreckers get what they deserve. Go die." I said, "Silly child, what are you talking about? If I die, you'll become an orphan." Netizen 3, "How could a big company's boss be interested in a woman like her who throws herself at him? She has no self-awareness at all." Smile. I said, "Did you install a GPS? Do you know your place? Have you collected enough trash in your neighborhood?" Netizen 4, "Unbelievable. She's not even ashamed and is still cursing online. This really shatters my worldview." I said, "How sheltered are you to have your worldview shattered so easily? Are you a product of the scrapyard? Then you better hide. The person above you collects trash, so watch out or you'll be taken away too." I said, "Come on, why are you cursing so slowly? Is your vocabulary so limited that you need to look up words in a dictionary?" In the end, everyone's focus shifted entirely. "No, how is she typing so fast? Why is she cursing so quickly?" Refreshing the page and there are already 7 or 8 new comments. "Is she an octopus in disguise? This is ridiculous. She barely uses any profanity when insulting others, so reporting her is useless. The bot doesn't even recognize it. Don't bother." Person above. I successfully reported a few of her comments, but I've given up now. "Do you really think you can report as fast as she can type? I battled through the night with my keyboard, outlasting wave after wave of night owls, and finally achieved a complete victory as dawn broke. I looked at the densely packed comments under the relevant topic, all bearing my ID, and felt a sense of pride. The system sighed helplessly. "You seem to be having a great time on your own. I guess I worried about you for nothing." I replied, "What do you know? This is a healthy way to release negative emotions and avoid breast hyperplasia." I said, stretching lazily, and ordered myself a luxurious breakfast as a reward, then began organizing the evidence at hand. For example, those provocative text messages Lisa sent to the female lead. For example, the messages Frank sent while manipulating the female lead. For example, the accusations they made together to pressure me into donating a kidney to Lisa. I can just take it and use it directly. Sigh, no wonder there isn't a single character in this book with an IQ over 90. Both the protagonist and the supporting characters are too easy to deal with, and it's just not satisfying. I had just sighed and posted the clarification on social media when I heard a knock at the door. The system jolted. Holy crap. Could it be that you've cursed too much and someone found your address? I didn't dare to open the door rashly and anxiously paced around the room, searching for a handy tool. Before long, I heard a man outside shouting with a powerful voice, "Is anyone there? Who ordered the spicy crayfish?" Me. I quickly threw down the mop and ran to open the door. The system angrily exclaimed, "Who in their right mind eats spicy crayfish in the morning?" After finishing the spicy crayfish, I went to catch up on sleep and slept like a log. When I woke up, it was already afternoon. Drowsily, I reached for my phone. As soon as it turned on, countless messages flooded in, ignoring the calls and texts from the Mitchells, the Lincolns, and the company. I went straight to social media and found that everyone was in an uproar. The post I had shared had completely blown up, causing countless netizens to switch sides. So it turns out the sisters' affair was fake. But the younger sister stealing her brother-in-law is real. How shameless can these two be? What kind of trashy novel is this playing out in real life? And they're even forcing someone to donate a kidney, someone with legal expertise. Please educate them on how many years they'd get for this. This domineering CEO cured my gold-digging mindset. Suddenly, I realize I don't love money that much after all. I value my life more. Help, everyone. Am I the only one cringing so hard I could dig a hole through my shoes? This is so cringy. Are these lines something a human could even come up with? Just typing out the words, "I'll marry you if you donate a kidney," makes my stomach churn. Am I the only one who doesn't feel sorry for Jenny? She could have just presented the evidence directly, but she had to scold me first. How unfair is that? Angry. I suspect the reason she didn't clarify earlier was because she was so furious with the scumbag and the green TB*TCH that she just wanted to vent her anger by lashing out. Smirk. Since I had previously criticized everyone quite harshly and didn't exactly come out on the losing side, no netizen was willing to apologize to me after the incident was clarified. However, the enraged crowd preferred to channel their anger into attacking others. They swarmed into Lisa's account in waves, spewing profanities, forcing Lisa to disable the comments section, so everyone then moved to the official advertisements of the Fu Corporation, lining up to unleash their vulgar insults. Thanks to the efforts of the vast number of netizens, all three of us ended up trending on social media, occupying several hashtags. Hashtag Frank Jenny Kidney Donation Gate, hashtag Marry Me If You Donate a Kidney, hashtag Sister Spray Bottle Kidney Donation, hashtag Sister Spray Bottle Raged All Night, hashtag Sister Spray Bottle Flooded the Square for 6 hours, hashtag. I was thoroughly amused and frantically took screenshots to commemorate the moment. Oh my god, they even gave me the nickname Sister Spray Bottle. The internet trolls in this world really have no manners. They're almost as bad as me. The system sighed. This is too outrageous. In the original work, the cyberbullying arc lasted for over 50 chapters. And even after the female lead died, she was still being harassed. But in your case, it didn't even last 24 hours, I said. My reaction is what a normal person would do. How many people in real life would endure endless malice without reason and without any bottom line, like the original female lead? At that moment, my phone rang again. Seeing that it was the company's HR number, I answered, and they immediately told me to pack my things and resign. I guess the online backlash was too intense, and the company couldn't handle it anymore. I hung up the phone and saw that there were still 2 hours left until the end of work. So I quickly hailed a taxi and rushed over. Perfect. While Frank is away, I'll quickly pack up my things and get out of here. But to my utter surprise, as soon as I rushed into the office, I saw Frank reprimanding the employees. He looked exhausted, and the employees didn't dare to make a sound. I was frozen at the door and asked the system in astonishment. Wait, it's only been 2 days. How did he get out? The system said. Let me see. Oh, the plot shows he's been released on bail. Makes sense, with so many business rivals watching him. If he doesn't step up to take charge soon, the other Mitchells might stage a coup. I clicked my tongue in amazement. Tisk tsk, indeed, no matter what world it is, money power is the most formidable. The system gloated again. Actually, Frank was essentially set up by Lisa, I said. What do you mean by that? The system said. Actually, based on Frank's capabilities, he could have avoided filing the case altogether. But at that time, he was so furious with you, and Lisa exposed the issue and caused a scene too quickly. Now, Mitchell's family's stock has plummeted to the Mariana Trench, and with public outrage running high, it's hard to contain the situation. Frank is out of options. As we were talking, Frank suddenly noticed me and said in a low voice, "Jenny, come with me." A chill ran down my spine, and I thought to myself, is he going to lure me into his office and crack my head open? After a moment's thought, I secretly turned on my phone's camera. What if, right, after the two of us entered the room alone, the frustration and anger on Frank's face suddenly faded, leaving only a mix of complex emotions. Jenny, do you know how I spent those days I was locked up? I heard that the detention center has daily classes on law, ethics, and cultural knowledge, and they also do crafts and such. I'll look into the details later. I'm resigning today. Can I leave now? But Frank ignored me. Completely lost in his own world, continuing on his own. During those days, I was alone in the room, with nothing around, extremely quiet. At that time, I wasn't thinking about the company's impact or Lisa's illness. Damn, I'm going to report him for not participating in the detention center's group activities. Then he slowly raised his head and said with deep emotion, "The one I've been thinking about all along is you," I said. Shocked, "Jenny, I can let go of the incident where you called the police before, and I won't force you to donate a kidney to Lisa anymore. Marry me." I was instantly furious. "You might not care, but I do. I already know your intentions. You just want to trick me into a relationship so we can settle out of court. You're so calculating, not much brain, but full of schemes." Frank was taken aback for a moment, then flew into a rage. "You think I said all that just to get out of trouble? Is that really how you see me?" He was like an enraged lion, his eyes turning red, but I puffed out my chest and stood my ground. "You did it, so why are you afraid of being called out? What, you want to hit me? Come on then, I've had my rabies shot, so I'm not afraid of you. Don't think just because you have the Animal Protection Association backing you, you can do whatever you want." Frank gritted his teeth and squeezed out a few words. "Jenny, you'll regret leaving me. Oh, I'm so scared. Let's talk about it when I actually regret it." I rolled my eyes. "The labor law says all wages must be settled on the day of resignation. Pay up, and we'll be even from now on." Frank's angry expression suddenly calmed down, and he snorted coldly. "So that's how it is. The reason you rejected me is all about money, right? I've already paid part of the money for the Lincoln family. Unless you marry me, I won't pay the remaining amount." I was absolutely shocked. I talked to him about the salary, and he talked to me about capital injection. I talked about glass marbles, and he talked about hip bones. I said very politely, "Was your intelligence cut off along with your umbilical cord? What does your relationship with David Lincoln have to do with me? I just want my hard-earned money. I came here today to ask for my salary. Do you understand? Or do you think I came to work to do charity? Are you that poor? Do you need my 60 or 70,000 to buy a coffin? You never used to scold me like this." Frank gritted his teeth in resentment. "I already said I wouldn't let Lisa interfere with us anymore. What else do you want? Do you really want me to kneel and apologize to you? No, no, no. It's not your fault. It's your parents. If they could just sleep properly at night and not cause trouble, they wouldn't have ended up with someone like you, with an underdeveloped cerebrum and a completely undeveloped cerebellum. You think I should just come crawling back if you don't like me, or just get lost if you don't want me? Who do you think you are? I'll ask you one thing. Are you going to give me the money or not?" Frank was almost out of breath from my scolding, but he still refused to budge. "I told you, as long as you agree to marry me, I'll give you anything. Just you wait," I said angrily, turning and walking away. Frank was still shouting behind me, "I'll give you time to think. Give me your answer as soon as possible. A person as nasty as you really doesn't have much time left." Then I slammed the door of his office, shattering the decorative glass. After leaving, I cursed wildly with the system. "That old scoundrel is withholding wages. May his whole family die horribly." The system timidly said, "Have you ever considered that his attempt to keep you just now, promising you everything, might have been sincere?" I said, "Excuse me. Frank's character is only supposed to like dead people, right? I'm not dead yet, so why would he like me?" The system said. "In the original work, the male lead only regretted it after losing the female lead. Theoretically speaking, he has indeed lost you." I narrowed my eyes and said, "In that case, there's only one way to deal with this lawless scoundrel." Then I went to the Labor Bureau and filed an arbitration case against Frank. Article 91 of the labor law states that all evil forces that withhold the hard-earned money of migrant workers are paper tigers. After leaving the Labor Bureau, I casually posted the video of my failed wage claim online to expose it. The incident with Lisa last time gained me quite a few followers, and as soon as I updated my social media, everyone quickly shared it, but the tone was a little different. When others expose unfair treatment online, they receive sympathy and comfort. When I share my misery online, I just become a laughingstock, day after day. Spray bottle sis provides so much entertainment, even though she's pitiful, I just can't bring myself to feel sorry for her. Ha ha ha, that line, "You just want to trick me into dating you so we can settle out of court," had me laughing my head off. Magic defeats magic, greasiness defeats greasiness. Sis, your offline performance isn't as stable as your online one? Is it because you can only curse at one person at a time, so your combat power is reduced? Dog head, sis, please start a class. Those of us who cry at the slightest argument need you to teach us the way. Teary-eyed. Not only are regular netizens laughing at me, but even the big verses are reposting with captions like, ha ha ha. Watching the increasingly cheerful atmosphere online, I started to question my life. I said, this doesn't make sense. Why do so many people rush to defend Lisa when she exposes something? But when I do, all I get is, ha ha ha, the system says. Is it possible that you just don't look like the one being bullied? Be honest with yourself. Does a person who can curse at others for 6 hours straight, holding their ground against all comers, really deserve sympathy? I'm tired, let it all burn. Fortunately, these netizens are fair in their judgments. Whether I deserve sympathy or not, it doesn't stop them from disliking Frank. As expected, the official Mitchell Corporation account was flooded with toxic comments. He was already out on bail, and now with this incident, the Mitchell family is in even more trouble. The hashtag #FooCorp wage theft also trended. Many short video creators are making a big deal about the secrets behind capital. While science popularizers are meticulously analyzing every law Frank violated and advising people on how to handle similar situations, the situation is looking very positive. Additionally, many brands that had collaborations with the Fu family have terminated their contracts to maintain a positive image, and the Mitchell family stocks have been falling repeatedly. The system helped me find out about Frank's current situation, which is said to be no better than the last emperor of the Qing dynasty. Not to mention the financial losses. He doesn't even have time to harass me anymore, as he's barely clinging to life. What's even funnier is that Lisa has also run into trouble, since she threw mud at me online last time but ended up being exposed by me instead. She has been hiding and hasn't dared to show her face. She must have been feeling stifled during this time, so she sneaked out to go shopping, only to be spotted and photographed by netizens. Her feigned illness was also exposed, naturally drawing another wave of criticism from netizens. But that's not important. The Lincoln family matter can be set aside for now. What really matters is that I actually received a collaboration offer. The other party is a self-media blogger with 8 million followers who wants to interview me, offering a fee of $300,000 for 2 days. At that moment, I not only doubted the world, but I also questioned my own mental state. Even a troll like me can get gigs like a celebrity. I was flattered and asked what I needed to do, but they told me to just be myself. There was just one thing: try not to swear, as editing it out is quite a hassle. Alright then. The interview recording turned out to be quite successful. Once the video was released, it immediately garnered over 6 million shares. And my newly created account on the platform was flooded with a large number of followers. They all said that I speak in an interesting way and think quickly, but honestly, I think it's just average. It wasn't until a few companies privately messaged me asking if I wanted to sign a long-term contract that I realized, with my current level of traffic, I could be considered a minor internet celebrity, since I was also unemployed at the time. I chose to join a company with relatively flexible conditions. The new job is a bit easier than I imagined, and the company doesn't give me many script requirements. I mostly improvise. Netizens have expressed that they like my persona, which is quite normal. I like myself too. My life and work have gradually fallen into a steady rhythm, and everything has stabilized. Not long after, Frank's public prosecution case was about to go to trial, and with the media frenzy online, I gained a small boost in popularity again. On the eve of the court hearing, the Mitchell family's lawyer approached me, hoping I would sign a letter of forgiveness. Normally, I wouldn't agree, but along with the letter came a large sum of compensation from Grandma Mitchell. The system had informed me about Grandma Mitchell's situation. The elderly lady was in poor health, living in a nursing home, and likely didn't have much time left. It was this very lady who had a keen eye and chose me, chose the original female lead, to be her granddaughter-in-law. It's safe to say that all of Jenny's suffering began with Grandma Mitchell, but the old lady herself had good intentions, and she was never the one who hurt Jenny. Besides, I was genuinely short on money, so I agreed to her request and signed the letter of forgiveness. In the end, Frank received a lenient sentence of 3 years and is now serving time, while the Mitchell family's estate was taken over by a collateral branch. The first thing the new head of the family did was to pay me the wages and commissions that were owed, along with additional compensation. Looking at the payment, I remarked to the system, TSK, the difference between people is just too vast. Look at this person's vision. Frank really can't compare. The system replied, I have even more interesting news. It said that the new head of the Mitchell family has cut off the Lincoln family's funding. The Lincoln family was already on the verge of collapse, and the funds Frank injected earlier have now gone to waste. I slapped my thigh. That's great, since I don't get a share of the profits anyway, it might as well go bankrupt. Just then, the doorbell rang. I opened the video intercom of my new house and saw David Lincoln standing outside, looking both worried and angry. Speak of the devil and he shall appear. I pressed the talk button and asked, What brings you here, old man? David Lincoln instantly switched to an ingratiating smile, pressing his face close to the camera and saying, Jenny, you're home, I just came by to see you. I clicked my tongue in annoyance. Get to the point, I'm busy. David Lincoln looked awkward for a moment but held back his frustration. Jenny, you know things aren't going well at home, and the project has run into some trouble. You probably wouldn't understand even if I told you. But you're on good terms with the new head of the Mitchell family, right? Could you help set up a meeting so we can talk? If our family business can recover, you'll have played a part in it too. I scratched my ear and said, Shake your brain cells back into place before you talk to me. Who are you calling, we? Don't try to act all chummy with me. What did you say? No way. He still hasn't gotten used to the way I talk. I said, Can't hear me because the signal's bad at the gravesite. Want me to stick an antenna in the dirt for you later? When it rains and a few big lightning bolts strike, maybe you'll even resurrect on the spot. David Lincoln was gasping for breath, unable to speak. Seeing how miserable he was, I softened my tone and comforted him. All right, it's not a big deal even if you really go bankrupt. If all else fails, just find a job. I heard the city's armed police brigade is recruiting police dogs. Your whole family is so human-like. You could give it a try. David Lincoln kicked my door twice in anger and then stormed off. I wonder if he'll come back to harass me after leaving this time. I ended the video and asked the system, quite puzzled, what do you think David Lincoln is thinking? Even if I'm somewhat famous, I'm just a small-time internet celebrity who got popular by accident. The money I make might seem like a lot, but it's actually less than what the driver for the new Frank earns. How could he possibly think I could connect him with the new Frank? Does the author of this story have any logic, or even basic common sense? Have they ever experienced the real world? Did they go to school or take their meds? The system said indifferently, maybe this type of story is purely about suffering for the sake of suffering. The author doesn't care whether the values or logic make sense. I've never understood it anyway. I pouted and said, I don't get it either. And I don't want to understand it in the future, the system said. By the way, your mission has completely collapsed. After you die, your soul will enter the cycle of reincarnation like everyone else. Don't you regret it at all? I retorted, isn't it a good thing to follow the same path as most people? I do like to be unconventional in what I do, but when it comes to life and death, it's better to go with the flow. The system chuckled, you're right, I wish you a pleasant life in this world. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.